Have you ever said, I'm just stressed? But when you really think about it, it doesn't really feel like just stress anymore. Because here's what's happening a lot of high performers are calling it stress when it actually is more like overwhelm, anxiety, or even burnout. And if you don't know the difference, you'll keep using the wrong strategy and stay stuck longer than you need. So stay tuned. So let's get into it. Stress, overwhelm, anxiety, burnout. So today I'm going to break these down in a way that actually makes sense so you can figure out what you're actually dealing with. Now, before we define anything, you need to understand this. Your brain is wired for survival. That is the whole essence of the stress response. And all four of these things live within that some shape, form, or fashion. So think of your nervous system like a smoke detector. If there's a fire, it helps you. But if it goes off every time you cook, then it becomes annoying, exhausting. And that's where some of these things get into play. They're overperforming and it's causing you to run amok a bit. So you're sitting there thinking, I'm fine, I'm handling it, I'm getting things done, but your body is saying something different. I've had moments where I've looked at everything on my plate, the kids, my partner, my business, the clients, the household responsibilities, and all the other things. And I could feel the pressure just building and building and building and building. But because I was still performing, I told myself, I'm fine. It's just what you got to do. You push through. And one thing that I know personally and professionally is that your load should not be greater than your productivity. And this is where high performers get it wrong. Your body doesn't measure how productive you are. It measures how much pressure you're carrying. And oftentimes high achievers like executives and entrepreneurs and people with busy lives are so used to functioning on high stress that is normalized, and we want to change that. So let's get into the first one. Stress. Stress is your body's natural physiological and psychological response to perceived demand, pressure, or threat. According to the American Psychological Association, stress is the way your brain and your body responds to challenges, whether that challenge is real danger or just something your mind interprets as pressure or danger. Now, what's important to understand is that stress was designed to be short term and adaptive. It activates what we call our fight, flight, freeze, fawn response, increasing your heart rate, sharpening your focus, and preparing you to act. That is what it's meant to do in the right situation. And that's helpful in the right situation. It helps you meet a deadline or respond quickly or perform under pressure or get out of Dodge when you need to in the right situations. But here's where individuals get caught. The system that was meant to turn on temporarily never fully turns off. And this is where, as I mentioned, most high achievers and busy individuals, this is where you live. So instead of stress being something you experience in moments, situational, it becomes something you're living in all day. Your brain stays alert. Your body stays activated. Your system, your nervous system, it never fully resets. It never fully gets to a state of relaxation, rest. And that's where it becomes a problem because when stress stays on for too long, it starts to disrupt your sleep, increase irritability, impact your focus and your decision making, where you get mental fog or brain fog. It keeps your body in a constant state of tension. And stress isn't the problem. Unresolved continuous stress is the problem. It's like pressing the gas pedal. You need it. You need it to go, but you're not meant to keep it pressed all day. You gotta break. You gotta pause. So how does that show up? Like, let's say in the corporate world, you get a deadline. You push, push, push. You work, you finish it. And what you're supposed to do at that stage is you reset. So deadline, work really hard and push, finish the deadline, reset. That's the cycle that's supposed to happen. But what happens instead is deadline, push, finish. You go back up, deadline. You go to the next task and you just keep going. Same thing with entrepreneurs, right? It's something like you create that service or that product. You develop your marketing tasks, your marketing strategy. You launch the thing. You have super high output to create these things. And then you should recover, learn from the launch, and adjust accordingly. But what happens is the shiny object syndrome. It's like you go from one focus to the next, to the next, to the next, never really fully pausing or exploring the effectiveness due to that go, 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 want something to work right now without giving it full time to do what it needs to do. So it loops and it loops and it loops. So stress, it should equal on, then off, right? But what happens is you get stuck on the on switch. Most high performers don't turn it off. Chronic stress, it's always on. Now, here's how you know it's stress specifically, because that is where people get confused. Stress has a very specific pattern. It's tied to something real. It's happening right now. And your system is trying to help you to respond to that. So in essence, what it's supposed to be, unless you've gotten stuck in that chronic stress cycle, is short-term situational stress. So what are some of the signs of that? You feel pressure tied to a specific situation. You notice your body getting tense or activated during that stressful situation. Tight shoulders, fast heartbeat, things like that. Your focus may actually increase temporarily while you're working through that thing. We call that productive stress. The big thing about stress is you feel relief once the situation is over. And stress usually doesn't stop you. You can still push through, perform, and get things done. That doesn't mean it's harmless though. Chronic stress can absolutely impact your health. But the biggest marker to this is stress, even when it's intense, has an off switch. And if you haven't learned to turn that on enough, there's ways to do that. Stress usually follows this pattern. Something happens, you feel it, you respond, and then it eases. So that's a little bit about stress. Now, next, overwhelm. Overwhelm is your brain having too many inputs, like too much stuff coming in at one time from everywhere and everything. It's your mind and your body reaching a point where they can't effectively process or respond to everything coming at you. So in essence, overwhelm is too much, no clarity, no action. There's so much coming in that the response is to do nothing. It's that moment where there's too much to think about, too many decisions to make, too many responsibilities pulling at you all at once. And instead of getting locked in and focused, you feel mentally crowded and physically stuck. It's like having 30 tabs open on your computer or your laptop. Everything is running, but nothing's working well. And overwhelm isn't always consistently the same patterns. What affected you yesterday may not be the thing that heightens or sparks overwhelm tomorrow. And overwhelm isn't always predictable, meaning the same factors will always cause overwhelm. It's just more of too many things all at once. And sometimes those things, you carry them just fine, but other times it triggers a feeling of overwhelm. So think about in corporate world or in the business world, say you deal with meetings, emails, priorities, managing deadlines, managing people all the time. But for whatever reason, that particular day, all those things are coming at you more than they usually do. And there's a tendency to freeze, pause, do nothing, procrastinate, put things off. That would be an overwhelm experience. Maybe in entrepreneurship, you're dealing with this stuff all the time, but for whatever reason that day, it's you feel like everything depends on you. Everything feels urgent, and the ability to get it all done just feels like a big pile of things, a big pile up that you just can't get to fast enough. And so there's a shutdown. So what does overwhelm basically look like? You have overwhelm is too much with no clarity equals a shutdown. Now, overwhelm doesn't mean you're incapable. It means your system doesn't know where to put your energy first. Now, if you're listening and thinking, okay, I'm in this somewhere, but you're not sure where, this is exactly why I offer a free consultation. I'm Dr. Nina, board certified clinical psychologist and peak performance coach, and I work with executive and entrepreneurs on exactly things like this. In that consultation, we break down what you're experiencing, what's driving it, what actually needs to happen to shift it. And if you know you've been pushing for a while and you need a reset, I also have a 7-day mental reset challenge that you can download. Both are linked below. Now, let's talk about anxiety. Anxiety is ongoing worry, usually about the future. That starts to impact how you function. So it's a pattern of ongoing mental and physical activation where your brain is constantly trying to anticipate, prevent, or prepare for something that feels uncertain or out of your control. So anxiety looks like you have anxiety, due to anticipation, due to some type of uncertainty, and then an activation of the anxiety feel and how you experience that. And that can show up in a host of ways. Anxiety shows up in the mind, shows up in the body. In the mind, it's like racing thoughts, thoughts that won't slow down, thoughts of worry, fears, doubts, worry about things that are going to happen, a lot of what if type of thinking. That is anxiety in the mind. Physically, anxiety may show up. You feel a nervous energy, is a good way to explain that. You may feel muscle tension. You may get a headache or restless. Maybe your sleep gets off. You may get, true almost panic attack type. You may get even more intense physical symptoms such as heart racing, sweating, difficulty breathing because of an intense reaction to anxiety. But here's the part people don't realize. Anxiety can not just be from future based thinking. You might replay something that already happened, a conversation, a mistake, a decision that you made, and your mind starts asking, what if this happens again? What if I didn't handle that right? So even though it's about the past, your brain is still trying to protect you from the future version of it. And it is worth mentioning that anxiety can be, just like the daily anxiety that we experience. We all have human emotions. No one can escape that. But anxiety can also reach a clinical level of concern, meaning it's not just occasional worry, very frequent or excessive. It's hard to control. It's hard to put it out your mind, and it's affecting your functioning, your day-to-day functioning in some sort of way. Maybe it's by concentration. Maybe it's hard to make decisions. It could be avoiding situations, people, places, things like that. Or even just feeling so overwhelmed that you don't act at all. And to the point that that's become so frequent that it's actually interfering with work, relationships, things of that nature. And at that point, it's not just stress or temporary anxiety anymore. It's something that may need more structured support. Now, for either, whether it's more clinical anxiety or just the anxieties that people get and experience, what it feels like sometimes is your mind won't stop running. You feel on edge even when nothing's happening. I call that nervous energy. Your body feels tense or restless, and it's hard to feel fully relaxed, right? What people say is hard to turn off. They're always on. So those are some of the things to look for. So another way to put it is car alarm going off. And it's not because something actually is happening, but because your system is trying to prevent something from happening. It's those what ifs. It's that caution. Now, how does this look in different settings? Well, in corporate world, it could be something like overthinking things that can happen at work, replaying and making interpretations, usually based in some type of fear, caution, negative type of interpretation. So you replay all those things. So for example, something could have happened and for whatever reason, you've interpreted that as failed. You feel embarrassed, these kind of things. Maybe you didn't say something or answer it in the way you wanted. So it's replayed over and over, but it's amplified from an anxiety lens. Lots of second guessing and doubt come up in anxiety as well. In entrepreneurs, fear of failure is a big one, and fear of losing everything, and fear of success. So these are some of the common ones. These what ifs, predicting things that may not ever happen, but they're causing anxiety. They're impacting and they're showing up in the way you run your business or in the way you're leading or working because of that anxiety. Anxiety makes the future feel like it's happening right now. And so you base decisions and act accordingly because of that lens. Now, let's talk about burnouts. Burnout is more than just being tired, but that's what we tend to equate burnout to. Burnout is a state of long-term emotional, mental, and physical exhaustion that builds when your system has been under pressure for far too long without enough recovery. That is burnout. It's what happens when stress stops being something you move through and becomes something you've been carrying for so long that your body and mind, it starts to run out of capacity. It's like a phone at 1% charged left, but still running 1,000 apps and still trying to perform as if it has full capacity and it doesn't have the bandwidth. Now, what makes this different than stress is you can still push and recover with stress, but with burnout, recovery doesn't feel like it's working anymore. You feel tired all the time, even after resting. Your motivation drops even for things you used to care about. You feel emotionally disconnected from your work, your goals, and even people. Your conversations, they're there, but you're not really present, maybe. Things that used to excite you, they feel flat. You care, but it doesn't feel the same. Other burnout signs are you feel mentally foggy or slower than usual. Small tasks feel very heavy, more than they used to. You start doing the bare minimum just to get through the day, and that's not really a part of your work ethics. Maybe you feel a sense of what's the point type of mode creeping in. And so instead of bouncing back after maybe a weekend or a short trip, you're still tired on Monday. Instead of feeling energized after a break, you're still slightly less drained. So burnout equals depletion. Burnout isn't just stress. It's what happens when your system has been overused without being restored. Burnout may not be a clinical diagnosis like anxiety, but it has very, very, very real effects. So burnout can reduce your performance, disconnection from work and relationships. It's an increased risk of depression and ongoing exhaustion that affects your daily functioning. So it begins to take a toll. And even though it builds slowly, it can impact your life in a big way if not addressed. Now, here's something to keep in mind. These can overlap. You can be stressed and overwhelmed, anxious and burned out. Now, we've talked about all four for a little while. Let's pause for a second, take a moment to reflect and ask yourself, what feels most familiar right now? Not what sounds right, what actually feels true. So let's summarize those real quick. Stress equals short term, overwhelm equals too much at once, anxiety equals future based fear, burnout equals long-term depletion. And if you're not sure, book a free consultation and let's break it down together. And if you're ready to start shifting things now, download the 7-day mental reset challenge in the description below. So hopefully you picked up a nugget or two on knowing some of the differences, some of the things to look for. So if this was helpful and you learned something new, subscribe, like, share, comment, any of those choices. And I'd love to hear which one did you recognize in yourself? And more importantly, what do you plan to do about it? That's it for now. Until the next one.